Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Over the last decade, the Andean region has become one of the most strategically important resource corridors in the world. However, what we're seeing is that the capital flows have not kept pace with the opportunity. We obviously see a lot of large global players remain well-financed and very active. However, what we are observing is that there's a plethora of junior and mid-tier miners that they are a massive opportunity in the region, that they still struggle to access structured international capital. And at the same time, we see a lot of international investors and financiers that they want to enter this region, but they are still struggling to figure out how to enter it. The Andean Bridge, which we will focus on today, was created to address exactly this gap. Today's discussion brings together the institutions helping design that bridge to explore how the Andes can evolve from a collection of opportunities into a connected financial ecosystem. Over the next 45 minutes, we'll unpack why this moment matters, what needs to change, and how capital pathways between the region, locally and internationally, can be built. I'm happy to be together with our partners in this initiative, with Guillaume Legarret, head of South America for TSX and TSXV, with Alejandro Berni, executive director of Bolsa de Mercados Argentinos, BIMA, and of course with Sebastián Piña, CEO of Impulsa Mendoza. Thank you all for joining us today, and let us begin with a few introductions to begin with. Guillaume, if you would like to make us the honors, if you can share a bit more about you and TSX.
Thank you, Stelios. Thank you for the invitation, and good morning, everyone. My name is Guillaume Legarret, so I'm heading the activities of the Toronto Stock Exchange and TSX Venture Exchange for Latin America, and I'm currently based in Sao Paulo. So what we do really at the TSX is to help connect projects with capital in Canada through our markets, our two-tier market ecosystem, TSX Venture and TSX, and we really value the importance of early stage projects. We believe that there's so much value that can be created in a pre-operational phase that we need to connect the good projects with capital. So the idea to join and to create this Andean Bridge initiative is key for us, and we're happy to be part of the discussion today to see how we can move this forward. It's also a pre-PDAC a virtual meeting. So for those coming to PDAC, there will be lots of discussion next week. But today, let's focus on what we can communicate around the Andean Bridge.
Excellent. Thank you, Guillaume. Alejandro?
Thank you. Thank you, Stelios. So I am a director at Caja Valores, one of the companies owned by BIMA, and I'm also investor relations officer for BIMA. And not everyone is aware that our local capital markets are growing very significantly, very, very strongly from a low base, but we are growing very fast. And hopefully we'll be able to tell you a little bit about that. And we are one of our key roles is to also be an access for capital for all types of industries, and mining in Argentina has a very bright future. So hopefully we'll be able to also work with the Andean Bridge to provide access to capital in order to complement what will be done at a global scale.
Amazing. Thank you, Alejandro. And I think it's extremely important to have, obviously, international capital markets, also local and regional capital markets working together. And Sebastián?
Hey, everyone. Thank you, Stelios, for the introduction. I'm Sebastián Piña, the CEO of Impulsa Mendoza, which is the state-owned mining company of the province of Mendoza, and we are in charge of promoting and developing and attracting investment into the mining sector here in our province. But we have like a strong view that the development of the mining sector starts, of course, with a strong exploration, and without exploration, without capital markets, we don't have exploration. That's why we're trying to create a huge environment that create through a platform the capital all over the world with the projects here in the Andean region and to position Mendoza as that financial hub.
Excellent. Thank you, Sebastian. Again, the goal of the bridge is essentially to connect local and international capital with the opportunity that exists in the region. So I'm super happy to have all of you essentially representing the different parts that we'd like to connect. I think it's worth maybe starting with a question to Guillaume, which is maybe from your own experience, right? I think you've been active in the region for almost a decade. When companies from the Andean region, they are approaching international markets, they are approaching TSX, either TSX or TSXV, maybe we can start by seeing more or less what essentially separates those that are successful and those that are struggling. And by understanding this, we can also understand where we can focus on to support them.
Yes, it's a big question. Access to capital, I mean, is in everyone's mind. I think the project owners, they are aware of the geological potential of their properties, but they lack the knowledge of international capital markets. And on the other hand, the investors are looking for new projects, but they find the lack of preparation as a point of friction, I think, between capital and the projects. And I think what I saw when we started discussing the Andean Bridge last year, I thought that it was really the best way for us to reduce these friction points, to make sure that companies are better prepared when it comes to the technical disclosure requirements. We have, as you know, at the TSX Venture, the National Instrument 42101, which is globally recognized. So this is probably the best way for project owners and investors to come together and to provide proper valuation for an asset. I think people that are just relying on the quality of their geology, they miss a point when it comes to approaching investors. So that's one key aspect. And there's always, I would say, good geology is good enough if you want to sell your project to a private company, to a strategic. But if you want to raise capital on global capital markets, you really need to have the right management team to bring this, to raise the amount of capital you need to start, and then move on to global markets and deliver the results that you promise to investors. So the management team is almost, I would say, top of mind for investors. If they just see good geology, it might not be for our markets at the TSX Venture. So, and we always talk about, of course, the governance and the quality of the asset and the good management team. But overall, I think it's about the readiness to connect with the market. Some companies might start too early to connect with the markets, but at the same time, when we see the markets that are a bit more aligned with exploration phase companies, the timing could be good to talk to investors at an earlier stage. For example, in 2025, we've seen quite an active market on the TSX Venture for mining. We've seen around 8 billion equity capital raised on the TSX Venture for mining projects. We've seen around 40 new mining listings on the TSX Venture exchange. So this is a positive signal, and also the TSX Venture got to over $1 trillion Canadian market cap. So these are positive signals when you have number of financings, capital raising, new listings for junior mining sector. This is a positive signal for the investors to start looking into more early stage projects even. That's why some jurisdictions like Mendoza were top of mind for some of the investors. And around that time, there's many jurisdictions that have early stage projects that could resonate to investors. And one last thing about the readiness or the positioning for early stage projects, we just announced last week our Venture 50 program, the top 50 performing companies on the TSX Venture Exchange. And 48 of the 51, it's 51 because there was a type at the 50th position, but 48 of the 51 are mining companies this year. Wow. So it's a clear signal that there is capital flowing into the mining sector, into junior mining, and it's a good signal for the Andean Bridge to grow and build on that market momentum. So I think I'll stop here, but I just wanted to tell you about how strategic TSX Venture is for early stage projects, but how important other sources of capital are also for these early stage projects. And that's how this dialogue can move forward with the Andean Bridge.
Excellent. Yes, we see the same thing, and I think you are essentially nailing it on the head. I think a lot of companies, they are trying to list or they are trying to access the capital markets of TSX or other international markets, but maybe they're not ready yet. I think there needs to be this kind of journey until they are ready to potentially list, and they need to know exactly what are the steps necessary and how they can prepare to arrive at that moment, right? And I think this is why it's super important to also engage with local capital markets, that they can act potentially as a bridge until that moment arrives. And I think why this kind of synergies should be in place, right? And I think this is a very good segue maybe for Alejandro, because we see that local markets, BIMA, they are evolving, and we see this evolution essentially to being more involved and participating in this earlier journey of these assets and these companies. Would you like to share some more thoughts and insights around that?
Yes, Stelios, I can't agree more than that. And so taking on your comment about the bridge, I think the bridge works both ways. And clearly, the leadership, the global leadership that TSX has is in this space is very well known, and hopefully we will be able to work hand in hand with them to provide, like you said, different alternatives to different companies and different stages, right? And there are different elements. There are different structures according to where each company is in the part of the evolution. We spoke about exploration, and clearly that type of equity investment or equity capital raising is the right structure. But we've seen in our local market already other mining companies coming out to issue debt because they are already in the production phase. So that's another type of instrument that can be used. We saw a trust being issued locally also for risk exploration. So we are starting to see more and more structures being used for that type of financing. And like I said in the introduction, mining is a critical area for Argentina. Mining is capital intensive in all the phases of the industry, from the exploration to production. And so we would like to be there as much as possible. Again, not working against, but working with the global capital markets, because different companies will have different needs, and therefore there will be best situations for each type. So we've seen our market grow very significantly. Just in the last 2 years, the amount of local issuance grew 90% to more than 33 billion, almost $34 billion last year. Our accounts of investors grew from 5 million to 21.6 million in the last 2 years. So also showing the amount of interest that local investors have. So we have a large pool of savings. Dollar savings at banks have also grown more than 160% over the last 2 years. And all of those savings can contribute to more financing. And so we hope to be part of that solution provider.
Excellent. And I think it's going to be critical actually for providing this kind of step towards international markets, right? Excellent. Sebastian, I know that Mendoza is actually taking a slightly different approach and focusing more into, being actively involved in creating a financial ecosystem that will eventually elevate everything, rather than focusing only on individual projects. Would you like to share a bit more? What's the vision for this space, for Impulsa Mendoza, and also for Mendoza itself?
Yes, of course, yes. Well, everybody should know that Mendoza is lagging behind in terms of mining, because we didn't have exploration like for 20 years. But during the last 5 years, we've been accelerating a lot and making our mining environment kind of stronger, or capable with a lot of capabilities and characteristics that, welcomes investors from abroad. But considering what I say, that if we want to have like a sustainable mining sector, we need to push exploration, and to push the exploration, we need the capital markets. And for attracting the capital markets and the environment, we need, of course, a huge environment toward that. That includes infrastructure, logistic, human resources, professional, of course, the capital. So when last month I visited Vancouver. That was my third time in a row. And that's where I understood that you don't need to be like the capital city to have a huge ecosystem for attracting the capital and connecting the capital with the projects. That's why I learned by visiting Vancouver, and that's what turned on my vision about Mendoza becoming that financial hub, because we have several similarities to that place, to that region. So what we are trying to do is to push and to take advantage on our competitive advantages, which are related to this characteristic that a financial hub requires, and to strengthen ourselves by educating our people. This means the project owner from all the region, not only from Mendoza, needs to learn how to get the capital. For example, taking as a benchmark TSXV, which is the place where most of the projects across the world get the financing. But you need to be ready for that, so we need to educate. At the same time, there is a huge opportunity, as Alejandro mentioned. In Argentina, all of Argentina are kind of good risk manager, because we are used to dealing every single day with the risk. So the opportunity of getting exposure to a risky sector, risky investment like the mining or like exploration could be quite easy for us, but we need to understand that we need to manage the risk. So we have all the opportunities in front of us. It's just about strengthening ourselves and to pushing and accelerating with this concept, like, for example, the Andean Bridge, which has the same objective.
Exactly. I think, spot on, Sebastian. A lot of capital and risk appetite is here. It's a matter of education and becoming familiar with this, right? Going back to Guillaume, I know that obviously we are pre-PDAC as well, where we're going to have a massive gathering in Toronto. And we see that PDAC itself is a massive ecosystem that over the years have acquired massive following and very big reputation for having all of the main players involved and essentially advancing projects and even advancing, whole industries. From our side, we see that building this kind of ecosystem is super important, right? Do you see there is, and with the Andean Bridge, we're trying to do something similar. Do you see that initiatives like the Andean Bridge could act, or we could create a pre-market kind of ecosystem, preparing companies before they, eventually reach the stage where they can start accessing the capital markets of Toronto?
Yes, Stelios, it is our day-to-day to try to identify the most promising junior projects to qualify for the TSX Venture Exchange. Obviously, there's listing requirements, and there's investor timing also. I think, as I mentioned earlier, the timing could be good for junior mining projects, but what we did in 2025, we started together in November when we announced the Andean Bridge initiative. We did this roadshow in Argentina, where we invited investors from Canada to meet with projects from Chile and Argentina. We did one roadshow also in April. So I think just testing the water from the Canadian investors' perspective was really important to try to understand the project readiness and also and if there was any other needs in terms of capital. And I think our conclusion is that there's a certain number of projects that would eventually qualify for our markets, and that's our role, to try to position those projects early, help them raise some capital, let's say between 2 and 10 million, connect with the right investors that we call sometimes the CPCs, and the capital pool company founders. So this structure really helps, access capital. We believe that the future of the TSX is also the TSX Venture. 55% of the mining issuers on the TSX are actually graduates from the Venture Exchange. So it's pretty clear that we have a role to play to help raise capital. But what we need to do is to build more partnerships with the ecosystem. As an exchange, we we can be part of the discussion. It's the core of the thesis, to speak with people. But there is a capital structuring gap in the region, and alone the TSX cannot respond to the capital needs of the mining sector in the region. And also what we can do in Canada is help raise capital, but what we found through the discussions with BIMA as an example is that the local capital markets in Argentina will eventually support the mining sector more actively. I think there's a very important retail investor base in Canada, but also in Argentina. So if we work together, if we connect the different players, I think it will help issuers access capital, not only global capital through TSX Venture and TSX, but also eventually the local pools of capital in Argentina and other regional markets. And I think that's what the Andean Bridge can do, is bring those players together. And that's also one of our key objectives. And around PDAC, we're organizing a matchmaking session with deal makers in PDAC. We're going to launch the Andean Bridge on March the 4th during PDAC. So for those projects that are going to PDAC, we hope that it will be a productive matchmaking session for those projects. But the intention through the Andean Bridge in 2026 is also to bring more projects, more investors to the region, in Argentina, in Chile, as an example, in Peru, in Colombia. And so these markets are key for the growth of TSX Venture, and we want to see more investors coming down. And through the Andean Bridge, I think it's a way for the proper introduction to investors to the local market. So we're happy to be part of this, of course.
Thank you, Guillaume. Alejandro, from your side, obviously we see that BIMA is getting more and more involved. We see, I think also following Guillaume's comment, we see that, yes, collaboration with the local national market is also super important. And I know there is some collaboration potentially pending between TSX and BIMA. I don't know if you would like to maybe comment a little bit on this, or how can we have this kind of collaboration of local and international markets actually for the best approach of the overall market?
Absolutely. One of the key elements, I think, is for the first stage companies, for the exploration stage, is the double listing. Basically, this means listing in two markets. This is not something new from a development perspective. It is new for Argentina. It used to exist, but it's been simplified, and I think that's the important part. The regulator has been simplifying a lot of the processes to raise capital, and this was one of the simplifications that was done. It used to be very onerous, a lot of documentation. You needed a local company to be your representative. Most of that has gone away now, so it has become very simple. And the double listing can work both ways. So again, depending on where the company is, if it's a very small amount of capital that they're going to raise, then probably global standards, global costs are going to be too much of a percentage overall of the capital raising. So if it's less than $5 million, for example. So the best solution for that company would be to first list locally, and once it grows, then it can list abroad. Or the other way around, if it's already a large company or needs to raise a large amount of dollars because of where the exploration phase is, then probably it would be the other way around. It would first go global and then local. Each market has its benefits. Much larger access to capital, obviously, in Canada, but we locally also act as a marketing tool. So it's important for companies to showcase themselves, and a lot of times doing that through the exchange is a very efficient way to do it, because it is the place where investors come naturally. We also have the benefits that or the positives that Guillaume was mentioning about a very large retail base. All of the growth we've seen locally has been with retail investors, and the benefit of that is having a much better diversified funding pool, because when it's one or two large investors, then you are much more subject to what they want to do in the future. Whereas if it's a lot of small investors, it's much more diversified and therefore a lower funding risk for the company, right? So each market has its differences and its positives, and so that's why tailoring for each type of a situation is important. And this is where the education and the awareness that Sebastian was talking about before, that's where it comes in. So there are a lot of details, and therefore that awareness issue is important, and that's what we're trying to do through the Andean Bridge.
Thank you, Alejandro. Sebastian, coming back to you. So as we are seeing, you are taking an active role in creating this ecosystem and educating and connecting the different parts of it. So how do you see Impulsa Mendoza and Mendoza essentially seeing its role in connecting projects, investors, and international exchanges?
Well, I think it's about competitiveness. And you are competitive when you are, strong with your comparative advantages or with your competitive advantages. I think that Mendoza presents, or this has been confirmed by the study, the research developed by the Universidad Nacional de Cuyo, our national local university, where we have, when considering a financial hub and taking as a benchmark the GFCI index, huge comparative and competitive advantages. Our comparative advantages are our resources. We have good human resources. We have good restaurants, good hotels, good conference venues, good logistic, good connection through our airport. What we need to improve, of course, is our education, our technology adopted into a financial hub. And that's why we're pushing with this kind of initiative. But there is a huge comparative advantage right there because our people is well educated. We have good university, we have good institutions, we have banks, we have brokers. So plugging in the network of the mining sector and the education required to make more efficient the business and the financing is something that when comparing with other regions is quite easier when considered like a regional overview of the opportunity. And that's why we're trying to push on this way, because we understand our comparative advantages that can help all the region to connect the capital and the project in a more efficient way and to accelerate the exploration that is something that we really understand and have in mind to make more sustainable our mining process across the following years.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sebastian. And yeah, I think that we are all convening to a very similar point, which is I think there is a lot to be done, but I think it's very clear what we need to do, which is connecting, more closely the local and international markets to create these kind of pathways and to focus a lot on the education to essentially show to a lot of the local players in Argentina, but also Chile, Peru, how they can really, start assessing this risk. How can they really assessing these kind of projects and start potentially allocating this capital to these projects, right? So we can create this kind of bridge to eventual international capital markets. I wanted to say, I think this is a good moment to say this, that exactly for 2026, we'll be focusing a lot on that. We'll be doing a series of workshops to educate local the local capital markets, not only through issuers, but also engaging a lot of family offices, a lot of high net worth individuals, educate exactly how they can start engaging in the mining sector to create this kind of bridge capital. And also we'll be educating a lot project owners, either greenfield but even more advanced like brownfield or junior and mid-level, how they can really set themselves for success to eventually access the local capital and eventually list in TSXV, right? So it's super, I think 2026 will build up on everything we learned last year. And we are happy that we'll have our first big matchmaking in April in Mendoza. Obviously, all eyes are right now in PDAC, and we will be meeting everyone next week there to do a proper introduction. But I would like to make everyone aware of our schedule as well of workshops and our April conference, which you can find more details in our website. Maybe it's worth going one more round of questions to close. And I would like to ask each of you, from your own point of view, right, what we're trying to create right now. If we potentially see ourselves in 3 to 5 years, okay, and what do you think that's, we should succeed on, or what do we need to make happen in order for our initiative to be a success? And it's a broad and open question, but yes, Guillaume, if you would like to take a stab at it.
Again, okay, so I'll start. Well, 5 years is a long period of time, but or 3. No, actually, 5 years is pretty good. I mean, we're definitely in the beginning of a new interesting cycle or super cycle for mining, for commodities. I don't think we've seen this in the past years. It's a very interesting timing, very interesting moment for early stage projects. But as you mentioned, Stelios, there's a need for education. So the workshops we're planning will make a difference. I would say that I've been with the TSX for around 7 years. And when I started, I think it was, since we have a very limited presence in Latin America, it was about partnerships, but it was also about, okay, come to Toronto when you're ready. But now we're not just saying come to Toronto when you're ready. We're saying, let's prepare you locally. So when you're ready, it will be easier to connect with investors, and definitely we can help. So I think for us, it's about getting more and more involved and engaged locally with local partners, local exchanges. We believe in the dual listing approach. With BIMA as an example, we worked with in Brazil and across Peru, Colombia, and Chile also to make sure that companies and that we can play a positive role in each market. So I think if our investors are aligned, if local regional investors are aligned, I hope we can see the retail capital flowing into mining. My idea would be, if we continue to see junior market outperforming, we will see exploration accelerating. So that's something that is happening right now. If we see exploration accelerating, we'll see capital flows into the junior mining sector, and this is good for all of us. So I think we can see a significant amount of new listings in the next couple of years, and the idea is to bring more and more investors to the region. PDAC used to be the place to meet for mining. It is still the place to be for mining, but I would like to see more bankers, more investors from Canada coming to the region. So my intention is the next 5 years is to grow the number of listings on our exchange, but also have this dual listing approach very strong with key local markets, so we can have interconnected ecosystems, and we can just rely on global markets. But Canada will play an important role, but I think we need to rely on the local players. So in the next 3 to 5 years, I hope we can build all of this, and that's something we can achieve together.
Excellent. Alejandro, what about from your point of view?
Well, from our point of view, it's going to be exactly the same as we are also an exchange. I see it a little bit as a pyramid. The KPI is very clear. It's number of listed companies. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. The example always of the iceberg, you see the tip, that's the KPI. But for that to happen, there has to be a lot of work put behind. Obviously, the education, the building the ecosystem means that we need to know each other. We need to establish relationships. We need to have trust and confidence and work together, and develop jointly what the best solution is in each case, because it's always up to the company. And going also to Sebastian's point about competition, capital flows very quickly, as we know, from one place to the other. Today we have a lot of opportunities here, and hopefully we can develop them, but we need to do a lot for that, because capital can very easily go somewhere else. So these opportunities need to not only continue to look attractive, but we need actual execution on the projects as well, right? And that appears to be happening so far in Argentina. We're reading about a lot of commitments to actual investments. And then it's not just the large company, but the whole value chain where we are also very interested in. Those typically will be small and medium-sized companies, and therefore they will rely a lot more on the local capital market and the local ecosystem just because of the size that they have, right? But hopefully they can grow and they can become multinational at some point and also access the global markets.
Agreed. Sebastian, from your point of view?
Well, if in 5 years we meet each other and we keep with this initiative, of course, it's a straightforward answer because it will be a success. And why I'm highlighting this? Because this is a good and clever strategy, but mostly based on the decision of the private sector. So if the private sector decides to keep pushing with this initiative, it will mean that the business will be there, the capital will be there, and the education and the investor and the project will be there. So, of course, what we are expecting for that moment is that all of these things will grow. We will have more financing from local people with local vehicles in our local stock exchange in a more efficient way connected with TSX. More project finance. The success case will be here, not in Mendoza, in the region. So if we keep working in this initiative within the next 5 years, it's straightforward. The private sector will be doing business, and that's what we want. So the success will be there.
Thank you, Sebastian. We see the same thing. The best way forward is to essentially create the ecosystem that will allow all the companies here to access it, to know who are the right players to be, working with, how they can access capital, how they can access the right, service companies that will help them. We see a very big fragmentation right now, and I think we will succeed on connecting everyone together and creating the right ecosystem to enable everyone. They can eventually access local capital markets. They can eventually graduate in TSXV, and I think we can see massive growth in the region, right? So I think we are also seeing a massive momentum. We will make a proper introduction in the whole initiative next week in PDAC as well. So if anyone from those watching us right now is in PDAC, we are more than happy to host you as well and have a chat over there. But for now, I'd like to thank all of you for being part of this webinar, both the audience, but also the three co-hosts with me. If you have any last comments, feel free to share them. I don't know if there are any last comments from either of you three. Otherwise, we can just close it here.
Well, I can just say from our perspective at TSX, we have a busy week next week with many LATAM countries. We have a minister roundtable in our TMX boardroom to talk about the competitiveness of the provinces that Sebastian mentioned. It's important to mention how each province is more and more competitive. We have 9 provinces coming to TSX to explain how they intend to be competitive. We had the LATAM market opening where we have all the delegations from across LATAM participating. We have a CEO roundtable with Peru. We have the Bolivian delegation coming to PDAC for I think the first time this year. We have a strong Chilean delegation as well. So there's many things happening. Hopefully we can connect next week, and it will be an opportunity during the matchmaking session and the Andean Bridge kickoff to talk a bit more about our action plan for 2026. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'll be in Toronto from Sunday to Thursday next week with a busy agenda, but looking forward to seeing everyone there.
Great. Thank you everyone for joining us. Sebastian?
Yeah, sorry. No, just to highlight, my view that all the people listening to this conference, to these webinars, just to clarify and to help to understand that the Andean Bridge is a platform that creates value, that connects. So participating in the conference, in the workshops, in the events, and all the activities comprised under this initiative creates value for everyone. That's what we are trying to do. So it's not just about sponsorship. It's not just about taking chair, or it's not just about attending and listening to macro or mining trends from a speaker. It's to be part of a platform that creates value, and that's how we want to help and to build it.
Yes, and if I can just add on that, I think we said it, but I want to emphasize it. This is a very strategic initiative for us. So we also encourage everyone to reach out and ask what they need and see how we can help them in raising capital and therefore in making this a reality.
Thanks a lot, Alejandro, Sebastian, Guillaume. I think, yeah, excellent points. This is an initiative to essentially elevate the whole region, and I think we're just at the beginning. A lot of exciting things are about to happen. We have a very exciting 2026 program. We encourage everyone to join us. I think it's a momentum that eventually will really make a change in the region. We certainly hope so. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us individually or to INBR, of course. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you to our 3 panelists. And we hope to see you soon in PDAC or in one of our Andean Bridge initiatives. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.